We're going to talk a little bit about maybe start out with Rob. What are you seeing in the bioeconomy, the bio sector from employers you're talking to, from companies? What are you seeing the challenges they're facing, particularly around digital adoption, AI adoption? What are you hearing on the ground?
Yeah, I guess it's sort of a threefold approach for biotech companies, and most of these are small, medium-sized enterprises, less than 50 employees, right? We're not really talking about the big pharmas that are in terms of all of this. And I guess some of this, one is they're experiencing the typical pains of looking at this technology and looking at a disruptive technology from any other SME. In other words, how our generic things of doing business, whether it's accounting or sales or marketing, are there aspects of this that I'm either falling behind or that I can take up? And what challenges do I face in terms of doing that? I think because it's usually all of the CEOs of these SMEs that are doing the HR, they feel that they're very ill equipped because they don't have a core competency in the technology themselves to be able to judge. So I think they're feeling a little bit at odds for that. Second of all, I think that there something that is unique to the biotech industry is their life's blood is intellectual property. They create molecules and medical devices and all of these little things. And right now there is no real guidance out there for intellectual property as to if you feed it into a generative AI engine or platform and somebody does something to that intellectual property, who owns it on the back end? Is it the engine? Is it the one who prompted prompted the instructions or what? And that makes them very scared because it's like for them putting in the secret formula of Coca-Cola and worrying about who's going to steal it, right? And that's their life's blood. And I think the third one is from an SME perspective, and I guess that's probably generic to everyone, but I think it's very key to biotech companies. They haven't seen what efficiency means, what efficiency gain equals. Beyond giving access to these online tools, et cetera, and letting people play on them and hoping that they can bring efficiency gain into their own jobs or into their own activities, they haven't yet been able to measure that or define what an increase in efficiency for them means. Does it mean that they'll save money on salaries? Does it mean that they'll have quicker to market in certain things? Or does it mean that cost of sale goes down or the sales cycle shortens? All of these things, greater access to investors or foreign markets or something. None of this has been defined to them. So unfortunately, it's very nebulous for them to buy into wanting to adopt a disruptive technology because they can't really define, they don't feel confident in their ability to say it's going to bring them advantages. So that's sort of where they are right now. And they're probably behind most other verticals in terms of the adoption of the technology within their own teams. So sorry that was long-winded, but that's sort of
No, that's great.
going on.
Very interesting. And I think we'll come back to a bunch of those points. But JP, what are you seeing broadly in manufacturing? What are you hearing?
Just in high level, since January 2025, I mean, with all the uncertainty and everything that's happening in the US market and our relationship with them too, the biggest challenge is a shift. Like right now,
Right.
it's very much around market diversification, trade exposure, and we're also very much talking about domestic trade. So there's a big conversation in Canada how you actually connect the West with the East and Central Canada. So that's at top of mind for manufacturer. But right under this, there's still labor shortages as well as a skill shift, and we're totally seeing all across the region in Canada. You could see manufacturing facing like issues to recruit people. So there's the mismatch of what's available in the labor market is no longer fitting what the employers are looking for. And we have seen just in the last 12 months a shift towards specialized workers. And that's a big shift for us because it used to be entry level position that would be number one position, unfilled position. Now we're introducing specialized workers, skills trade. That's a boost on the technical training and the digital skills. So back to the point that Rob was saying, that is causing also a big shift in our own membership by now we no longer are looking for the traditional skills, the mechanical, as well as what we call the operational position. Now we're looking at digital skills like automation, robotics, digitalization, AI, and what this means in just on how we actually bring these skills into the small and medium size firms. So new methodology, new ways of doing it as well. So it's a big shift from that perspective.
That's great. So, Lev, I think, picking up on what JP and Rob said, we're also seeing a lot of kind of literature and research come out that maybe bolting AI onto existing workflows and processes is having limited impact on productivity. So, how do you think about this? What should small businesses, CEOs, owners be thinking of in how they adopt some of these new technologies? As you've heard, it's a bit of a perfect storm right now. They're getting hit with a lot of different things, whether it's trade related or geopolitics. We're all feeling a bit of that, but we're also at a very critical moment in time around an advancing technology that it's important to be paying attention to as well. So how are you thinking about all of this?
Well, Mark, I mean, I think the principle here that I think holds, whether it's SME, large scale, or hyperscale, is mindset. And whether you are the CEO or whether you are in management or seeing the opportunity to enter into bio or manufacturing or any other sector, a lot of it has to do with mindset. And let me sort of drill down just a little bit on that. I do think, as somebody who's witnessed multiple generations of disruptive technology over the last 50 years, I think the mindset that we have to frame is this more of the same, just one more disruptive technology? Or is this perhaps something significantly different that is more like a shift in the tectonic plates that we need to be thinking about in terms of, industrial revolution, agricultural revolution, the technological revolution? Really, software might have been sort of a glimpse into what that has meant for bio and what is meant for manufacturing and other sectors. But I think there's a case to be made that AI and whatever AI evolves to is it perhaps that kind of significant in human history terms, that moment in time. And as a result, certainly the way I've had conversations around the United States and across Canada, around the world, as I've had chances to talk to the folks who are in leadership positions, is that there are two kinds of mindsets. Big generalization, to be sure, but one is the idea that we will actually wait this one out, like we have in the past, and we'll just sort of gird ourselves that somehow we will manage to survive by just, as it were, being as thoughtful and careful as we can against the existing realities. Better to, a bird in the hand than two in the bush. Just try to execute. The second approach, and the one that I find myself more and more trying to advocate for, is a growth mindset as opposed to a survival mindset. And in that particular case, Mark, the piece that I genuinely believe is that adaptability and innovation or die is actually the right mindset here. A little bit of paranoia is not a bad idea at this moment in time. A little bit of idea of sort of the competitive moment that we're in, that the centers of gravity on a global scale could well and are beginning to shift, that where we are seeing significant early wins around AI aren't necessarily in the places that we've expected them to be. The areas where we thought there might be early wins aren't necessarily showing up. And I think that the moment here is to find ways of moving below the sort of breathless headlines about how much AI innovation and disruption is coming, and try to, in very practical ways, find ways to grapple with both the human response to try to understand the manual, like understand how is the car built? It's like, how does AI work? Like there's a kind of impulse to try to figure that out, versus actually how to apply it in a meaningful way to either, again, gain efficiencies or both for bio and manufacturing. I would argue a perfect moment actually to help shape the future of the ways in which this technology can evolve in an intentional fashion, rather than waiting for the future to arrive, actually helping to shape that future.
So I think you touched on a lot of really important points there, Lev, and I A lot of the narrative around projects that may not be working, there's some recent articles have come out, is that, a lot of money's been invested in companies implementing AI tools, but they're not seeing the productivity outputs. What do you think the really key differentiator is for those who are seeing really outsized gains? And there are a lot of companies seeing really outsized gains, and those that are having failed projects right now, like that are not producing what they expected, or they're investing a lot of money and nothing is changing. What is the differentiator there? What's happening?
It's hard to generalize across the economy, and obviously this is sector specific and ultimately sector overlaid by geography specific. I mean, I think there's a lot of complexity unfolding here, and in the context of how the market is responding, which is different necessarily what's going on the ground game. That is there, and in the high tech sector, which is the one I know best, there is significant adjustments, if you will, underway here. A lot of scale and bloating going on as we came out of COVID is now getting an adjustment, and AI is the excuse, quote unquote, for the adjustment. But it's much more complicated than just a single technology. We are seeing the most important early breakthroughs here are the things that the machines actually intuitively we've kind of understood would do well. It is in interesting ways in biomedical engineering, where we are seeing really interesting lab scale. This does not have to be giant enterprise scale, lab scale innovation, because in many ways the AI it can be a radically democratizing access. But I want to underscore a point that Rob made, which is spot on, which is the question of like whose data and where the intellectual property comes from. And yet again, I would say that if done carefully and properly, and we are seeing this work being done, that small language models, discrete language models, models that are not being shared in the large frontier models are actually very quickly, but again, in very specific ways, generating significant scientific breakthroughs, which can and have, with smart tech transfer and commercialization skills, being able to enter into the marketplace and at the same time protecting IP along the way. The areas where we thought there would be, like where there was so much hype early on across most sectors, was essentially on efficiencies to be gained, across the sector, and most of those had to do with displacing. A range of work of the workforce, and we are seeing some of that. In the analytics space, whether it's business analysis or legal analysis and the like, there is plenty of shift happening right now because the AI tools, can really do quite a bit of work that you would have a small army of analysts working on, and that's definitely a disruption that is happening. On the affirmative side, in terms of sort of gain, again, we're seeing lots of early evidence here that there are sectors, some of it is in the manufacturing sector as it relates to factory workflows and modeling that is going on, opportunities for just basic things that we all have to work on together across all sectors, like the human capital development and how we actually think about giving feedback into the system. These pieces of these AI agents, if you will, can help managers and employees, have intentional conversations in ways that at least, again, we've got plenty of proof that may not gain efficiencies, but there are ways of actually, I guess this is kind of in one way some of the irony of it. We can actually unlock more human conversations, more human agency than necessarily we thought, because we are finding early ways of having the machines, as it were, kind of help streamline some of the administrivia that is so much part of all of our lives in the workplace. And if it's done with the right kind of growth mindset, it need not be as a threat necessarily, and it need not be the case of a zero-sum game. And so certainly we're finding that those examples in startups as well as in small, medium-sized businesses where those tools are gaining both managerial as well as employee opportunities.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. If you're acting from a growth mindset, you'll think about how you can grow the pie, so to speak, the opportunity space. But if you're acting from just purely looking for efficiency, cost savings, etc., you may be actually acting in a mindset that will limit your future growth, but also will have some of the negative external consequences we've been thinking about with a labor market displacement, et cetera. But I believe there's an opportunity, if we frame it right and really think differently, to really grow the opportunity. What we've seen a lot is, again, businesses bolting a tool onto, say, existing workflows and not rethinking how the work could actually be done, and how that, in doing work differently, you could actually grow the pie. So if you were Lev, if you were JP or Rob, you've heard about the challenges of small, medium-sized businesses. You're getting buffeted with all kinds of challenges right now. You're a small leader. You're trying to be the head of HR, the CEO, janitor, in some cases. How would we at a systems level, so we've talked about the organization a little bit, how would you at a systems level, what would your advice for JP and Rob be of how we might be able to do things at a sector level? Any ideas?
Well, again, I do think this is mindset and it is leadership. Again, Mark, you and I have chatted a lot about this work. And I, in my own organization, I tell the story of the president of the United States back in the early 60s visiting NASA at the launch of Apollo and actually bumping into a janitor and asking the janitor what she does. And she said, "I'm helping put a man on the moon." I think that is exactly the right mindset of the moment. That if in fact this is innovate, adapt, or die, that is actually for the whole organization, where ideas, where insights, where opportunities lie. A ton of our instincts here right now is to figure out how does it work. And that's the wrong, in my view, the wrong instinct for leaders to undertake here. It's really, again, the opportunity to how to shape the ways in which these technologies can be used to essentially chart and frame the future. And I think that again, I don't think that there's a difference necessarily between the two countries, between the United States and Canada here. It's just that in Canada, you have a preponderance of small and medium-sized businesses across both, for example, bio and manufacturing. And in that regards, the agility that you have is an advantage. Agility in
Yeah.
the sense that you're smaller and more capable of making pivots and adaptive. Big, complicated organizations are very, very hard to turn around. And yet, again, the tools themselves are largely democratized. The access to it, it's not cost prohibitive to get in the game. In fact, this is about curiosity driven innovation that is possible right now. And I think, again, I come back to kind of a mindset and an idea that, if you do believe that it's innovate, adapt, or die because of the broader global context, or again, even the East-West kind of context of what is unfolding in Canada, it's a fantastic opportunity, unless the mindset is survival only. And that is something that it's hard as humans for us to overcome, because we've been wired for millennia that when under threat, we go into survival mode. And so this is kind of in some ways an anti-fragile orientation. How do you shift the wiring that we have to actually embrace the challenges that are there? And again, I think that's where variability and adaptability is probably where leaders have to help people come out of the shadows of their instincts here. And again, you and I, Mark, have spent a lot of time thinking about how to actually develop content program to actually support that journey, because I don't think it's necessarily inherent. I think you actually have to have intentionality.
If there was something
If
I
I
could
can,
add to that, sorry, JP, really interesting points, absolutely. And I'm wondering if there's also an opportunity, because something that the United States we've always seen that has had an advantage over some of our approaches to it is connecting the investment community and the money and the capital with the technology and with the innovation sense of innovation that's there. Whenever I've spoken to SMEs about human resource management or on those, that they'll glass over unless it's the venture capitalist that's saying, what's the team that you got assembled in order to market, to bring your product to market. And I'm wondering if there's a little bit more of that we could bring to it, because it is a question where, beyond the leadership that you're talking about, Lev, it is how are you embracing this disruptive technology in a leadership manner to harness it and to make it an advantage for your business. And I know that's where some small and medium-sized enterprises take notice, right? When they're investors and the investment community makes the argument, in terms of saying, what are you doing? Because that's going to hinge on my decision. That's what I'm going to hinge my decision on investing in your company on. And I think that's lagging behind right now with this technology. It hasn't, because I think the venture community is sort of waiting to see what happens as well, that they haven't done that. So I think there is some opportunity there for either us to influence or to try to use the levers that are in the marketplace, because the United States does that, I think, better than most countries. Certainly in biotech, does that probably. It's a competitive advantage around the world. It's able to use those levers and integrate those communities of science, investment, education, all at the same time, and it is absolutely a competitive advantage.
JP,
Yes, I love the conversation about the mindset and the growth mindset. This is very in the moment right now in the Canadian manufacturing as we're transforming the sector. We're asking ourselves, like, can we make this here in Canada? The things that we've been buying from the United States or internationally and all that. So there's a big call for entrepreneurship and being more strategic. And for us, when we socialize this idea of value creation, and I say this value creation in the sense that we're coming from decades of an obsession on cost cutting. Like that's been always in the mind of, okay, let's being lean, let's being operational efficiency and so on, which really it's 100% required if you want to adopt new technology, whether it's automation, robotics, or AI. But I think here's the opportunity to bring it at a strategic level. And this is the relationship we're establishing with small and medium firms to say, okay, don't look at this in a tactical way. Look at it from a strategic positioning, how you can actually advance your company and bringing a business goal with AI and making it really omnipresent in your planning for your own organization. So that's a big piece of our action, and I would be looking for advice or your guidance on this, Liv, because when talking with the CEO, and this really where we need, I 100% agree with you. Leadership has to be at the table, and that's the only way. If it's the same thing for the conversation on advanced manufacturing, and we have seen, this is the good news. We have seen in the last 2-3 years investment in advanced manufacturing. Now we're seeing investment in skills and not skill like in manufacturing. Just to put a bit of context, like it used to be sitting in the head of the most experienced skills worker. Now with new digital skills, which is much more explicit, then I get that there's going to be a continuous learning process to do it. But I think at least it's tangible. It's about software. It's about digital literacy. It's about interacting with technology, which is not sitting right now in the mind or the corporate memory of the company. So that's a big shift in our own companies as well.
can I just Well, I was just going to sort of share that, I think that the headlines in Canada these days, we need to sort of find a way to break down where the opportunities sit and where, in fact, there's still very important national policy work to be done. And the two are not, in my mind, the same. At a national level, I fully understand the need to have conversations about how Canada can and actually perhaps must participate in building alternatives in terms of frontier models around AI and infrastructure for data centers. And I get all of that again, and it's probably worth debating, but not here. Here, the most important piece is to understand that for small and medium enterprises, there is an opportunity that we've probably never had before, which is in the past, to innovate in a lot of small and medium enterprises required significant capital as a prerequisite. What we have now is actually the ability to use either any of the frontier. There are over 50 large language models in play now that are relevant to this space. A handful of them are, as you will, fairly expensive to participate in, by which I mean perhaps a couple $1,000s a year to actually participate in. There's plenty of open source, very, I would say, robust language models at all. So somewhere in that spectrum, where in fact you can innovate with AI and then present to your investors the opportunity to both take that software innovation that's related to bio or related to manufacturing and make the case for why capital investment is actually doable because we can create digital. And again, Mark and I have talked a lot about that. The ability to use digital twins to simulate the innovation that you're after is, at least at the beginning, a very, very small increment of scarce capital investments. It's the ideas that can excite investors about what it could mean and the ability to build business cases, even without having a large bench of people who can write business cases. Your AI can help you with designing that and with other concepts that are there. And I think it's relatively straightforward for a small or medium-sized business to get in the game to excite investors. Because Rob, as you point out, it's absolutely about making the link to good ideas with good leadership, talking about the right kinds of things, and finding capital. It is that trifecta that is so important. And again, I think it is a mindset issue. While the national policy needs to be sort of how to compete globally, okay, that's all important. But what we can do right now, very pragmatically, is encourage. And again, I think your roles as sector leaders is perhaps to help in the orchestration and in the ability to amplify the examples that are going on in the sector to try to attract good ideas, people who want to lead them, and obviously capital that investment that is always looking for good returns.
So, what I'm hearing actually is something that is often framed as a challenge. The level of SMEs we have in the country, actually, because of their ability to adapt quickly, is potentially a strength. I'm hearing that there's like significant increase in opportunity if they understand how to, because the tools are creating far more accessibility to, I mean, it's crazy. I vibe coded a couple of things myself on the weekend that are increasing my personal productivity. I mean, the accessibility, and it's not hard. I've never coded a line of code before in my life, but it's accessible to everybody. Everybody could do it, but maybe hasn't tried. And it does get back to leadership. And we have, I think, David Coletta, who's a national market research and pollster here, has talked about how we came out of COVID in kind of a scarcity mindset. And we've actually even moved to a precarity mindset where we feel like the foundations are shaking. But this is a time for actual leadership. And the opportunity is there if we can galvanize kind of around it. And it could be a real Canadian moment as well. And so I think, to have Rob and JP on the call today, who are kind of at the forefront of potentially helping, because I do think it needs sector-based approaches and organizations that act as intermediaries to scale this, I think is a really, really exciting opportunity. But we do need to find a way to collectively shift that mindset. So I really, really appreciate it. This is the first, I hope, of many conversations, but I think we have our marching orders, Rob and JP. We have to figure out how to change mindsets.
Easy
So
peasy.
what do you guys think?
If I can jump in, and this has been a business priority at EMC, is to reestablish relationship with senior executive in the manufacturing sector. We've been too tactical, and now we need to be more strategic. And the only way to do this is to have full buy-in from CEO, from business leader, from investors too. And this is where it excites me, because that's in the last, I would say, 5 years, we've been trying to move the needles and establish relationship, mostly on the workforce development side and tackling skills and labor shortages. Now we're touching business issues and the future of the companies and the future of the sector, bringing opportunity and having this in the socialize. And you can just imagine that at EMC, it's creating these network within the network in Canada. So connecting companies coast to coast and doing these strategic alliance. So for us, it's I'm with you. It's a big task in front of us, but a very exciting one, Mark.
And Lev, something I think that you picked up on and I think excites me about this is that we really are talking about applying leadership to a new technology. And we have done that in different sectors before. And and I agree with you, when you're small and a medium-sized enterprise, you are more nimble. You have that advantage of quickness often to be able to do that. And I think if we continue to have that conversation with them, I think we can level the playing field where we can let them know that their core competency on a technical basis is secondary. to their ability to take a look at opportunities and advantages, whether it's in the investment community or the larger global markets, to be able to adapt this and to say, this is a new advantage. I just have to apply the same lens of the opportunities that it presents for my company and for the investment community, and how to apply that within my company. And I think that's the point. We have to worry less about the hammer and more about the house that it's going to build.
Well, that's great. I think you've probably heard me say for a couple of years now, I'm not worried about AI. I am worried about a lack of leadership in an age of AI. And I think at every level, and we need to come together, work together. The future can be very bright if we have a collective shared vision. And like you said, Love, go about creating that, right? The future is yet to be written, and we have an opportunity to do that together. And I think Canada's opportunity is significant on the global stage, but we do have to break out of that precarity mindset. And so we've got our marching orders. I think we'll have another conversation soon. Thank you very much to all of you for joining us today and starting the conversation. We'll see you all again soon.
Many
Thank
thanks.
you.